Kitty Genovese, she was killed in Queens in 1964. And even though it happened more than 50 years ago, her murder, it is still talked about. Just last month, the new NYPD Commissioner mentioned her while he was talking about murder witnesses refusing to help the police. Now, the longstanding narrative, it's about Genovese, that is exactly the opposite of that. People watched, but in the end, did absolutely nothing. And that story, it has endured. But new books and documentaries are exposing what, in fact, really happened. Our fellow executive producer, Larry Epstein, he spoke to one of the filmmakers, and he also visited where Kitty lived and died.
That's what The Witness does. It is a debunking of the most iconic and one of the most iconic American crime stories.
That's James Solomon, the director and producer of The Witness, a documentary about the Kitty Genovese murder. Genovese was killed in Kew Gardens, Queens in March of 1964. Her story became a symbol of urban apathy and the heartlessness of New Yorkers. Here's how the New York Times reported it at the time. Quote, "For more than half an hour, 38 respectable, law-abiding citizens in Queens watched a killer stalk and stab a woman in 3 separate attacks in Kew Gardens. Trouble is, that's not the way it happened. But for several decades, that narrative was taken as truth."
The story of Kitty Genovese, 38 watched and no one helped, that is a very powerful narrative. And one could say that some stories are too good to check when you're reporting them. That may have been the case with the Kitty Genovese story. Some stories are also too good to give up. And it may seem that this parable, if you will, or morality play, sort of resonates with the public's imagination in such a way that it speaks to something and they don't want to give it up.
Kitty's brother Bill wanted to know the truth. The Witness shows his decade-long search for answers about his sister's life and her gruesome death.
The Times story was seen as proof that New York City was uncaring, and my sister's been the symbol of bystander apathy for decades.
No one investigated the 38, no one followed up on it or anything of that nature.
Was it worth all the attention it got, or was it a media creation?
It's a fascinating story, and undoubtedly sold newspapers.
Kitty Genovese died right behind that green door, but she did not die alone. She died in the arms of her friend.
Someone actually on that night, her name is Sophia Farrar, ran out in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, having no idea what was outside, and raced down a dark alley and then pushed her way inside a vestibule and cradled Kitty in her arms. Kitty died in the arms of her friend. The story is that no one helped. And in fact, there was at least one person who did, and many, several at least, have claimed they called that night.
When my mom tried to open the door, it hit Kitty. And she was facing her head towards the door, her feet towards the stairs. And my mother had to push the door in to get in. She held her and she could feel the stab wounds in her back. And her hands kept going, still fighting. And my mom finally calmed her down. But she couldn't talk and she started to gurgle. That was her. She was just passing then. She was dying.
But the original narrative about 38 people watching and doing nothing persists. Just this year, 52 years later, the HBO show Girls and Law & Order SVU had episodes based on the original story of what happened to Kitty Genovese.
Human apathy continues to be one of the grossest threats to mankind. Very dangerous. Very dangerous.
An assault in plain sight.
There's 100 windows up there. Somebody saw something.
So why won't anyone talk?
I didn't see anything. Tell us what you saw.
On the next all-new SVU.
Aaron Adler has lived in Kew Gardens since 1958, and he says the story has resonated for decades.
It had a big impact in all the college courses, in social studies. That became a big thing, and everybody knew about it and talked about it. And people would use Kew Gardens as a point of departure from reality, you know. Say, what do these people do? They're not interested.
And you can watch The Witness on Netflix, Amazon, Apple iTunes, Google Play, as well as Vudu. And for more information, we ask you to check out thewitness-film.com. All right, up next, everyone, we'll take a look at some local headlines, so please stay with us.